Good morning, everybody. This is the first time we've tried a virtual press conference at the Department of Justice, and I hope it goes okay. But I appreciate all of you participating this morning. Today I'm here to talk about the former Maduro regime and its direct participation in narco-terrorism, corruption, money laundering, and drug trafficking. Joining me today are the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jeff Berman, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Ariana Fajardo, the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division, Brian Schakowsky, and DEA Administrator Udom Dillon. As you will hear, the Department of Justice is announcing the unsealing of a superseding indictment filed in the Southern District of New York against 4 defendants, including Nicolas Maduro, as well as the current head of Venezuela's Constituent Assembly, the former Director of Military Intelligence, and a former high-ranking general for their involvement in narco-terrorism. In addition, a recent superseding indictment charges 2 high-ranking regime leaders with corruption. Further, the Southern District of Florida unsealed charges this morning against the Chief Justice of the Venezuelan Supreme Court involving money laundering. Additionally, this morning, the Criminal Division unsealed an indictment charging the Minister of Defense for his involvement in drug trafficking. These charges are in addition to charges the Department has previously filed in the Eastern District of New York, the Southern District of Texas, and the District of Arizona against former members of the Maduro regime, totaling 15 defendants. Of these cases, 13 are DEA-led investigations, and 2 are HSI-led investigations. The indictment of Nicolas Maduro and his co-defendants alleges a conspiracy involving an extremely violent terrorist organization known as the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, the FARC, and an effort to flood the United States with cocaine. Now, FARC has been operating in Colombia. In 2017, the Colombians entered into a peace agreement with FARC, under which the overwhelming majority of FARC members laid down their arms and have been living within the political structure of Colombia. However, there's a dissident group of about 2,500 FARC members, and they have taken up on the border between Venezuela and Colombia. These FARC dissidents continue to be involved in drug trafficking and armed insurgency. They have obtained the support of the Maduro regime, who is allowing them to use Venezuela as a safe haven from which they can continue to conduct their cocaine trafficking and their armed insurgency. There's an area right on the border in Colombia, Norte de Santander, which is one of the primary cocaine-producing areas remaining in Colombia. The FARC gets this cocaine over into Venezuela and then is given safe haven by the regime to fly this cocaine from an area called Zulia near Lake Maracaibo up into Central America. Since 2016, this air bridge has been established and has grown 5-fold in just those 4 years. In addition, the regime is allowing these drug traffickers to take drugs by a maritime route into the Caribbean. We estimate that somewhere between 200 and 250 metric tons of cocaine are shipped out of Venezuela by these routes. Those 250 metric tons equate to 30 million lethal doses. The United States attorneys from the Southern District of New York and the Southern District of Florida, as well as Assistant Attorney General for the Department's Criminal Division, will now describe some of the indictments in more detail. But I want to give you a sense of just how deeply the institutions of the former Venezuelan government are infected by criminality and corruption. You will hear that the people profiting from this corruption are high-ranking members of this former regime, and you will see how this involves all branches of government, executive, judicial, and military. With that, I'll turn it over to the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jeff Berman. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Today, we announce criminal charges against Nicolas Maduro for running, together with his top lieutenants, a narco-terrorism partnership with the FARC for the past 20 years. The scope and magnitude of the drug trafficking alleged was made possible only because Maduro and others corrupted the institutions of Venezuela and provided political and military protection for the rampant narco-terrorism crimes described in the charges. As alleged, Maduro and the other defendants expressly intended to flood the United States with cocaine in order to undermine the health and well-being of our nation. Maduro very deliberately deployed cocaine as a weapon. This indictment is the culmination of over a decade of work by our office and the DEA Special Operations Division. Since 2006, we have been prosecuting Central American drug traffickers and corrupt officials and developing evidence that provided the foundation for the charges unsealed today. While Maduro and the other cartel members held lofty titles in Venezuela's political and military leadership, the conduct described in the indictment wasn't statecraft or service for the Venezuelan people. As alleged, the defendants betrayed the Venezuelan people and corrupted Venezuelan institutions to line their pockets with drug money. The defendants called their cartel the Cartel of the Suns. The name they chose reflects the cartel's identity and operations. It is a direct reference to the sun-shaped stars that Venezuelan military officers wear on their uniforms. Indeed, 3 former military officers of the highest rank are charged in this indictment. At the direction of Maduro, and in pursuit of their own personal profits, these officers negotiated drug sales, protected the FARC's transportation of coca leaves from Colombia, provided safe haven in Venezuela for cocaine manufacturing facilities, and supplied an authorization codes and cover for the planes and the boats that transported the shipments as they began their journey to the United States. The indictment also charges senior leaders of the FARC, the Colombian terrorist group that has long been one of the largest cocaine producers in the world. Around 1999, the cartel invited the FARC to expand its operations across the Colombian border into Venezuela as part of the cartel's effort to flood the United States with cocaine. In exchange for their contributions, the FARC leaders received caches of military-grade weapons, including machine guns, ammunition, rocket launchers, and explosives, equipment to help fuel their long campaign of terrorism. This is Maduro, the leader of the Cartel of the Suns. He is charged, along with his co-defendants, with conspiracy to commit narco-terrorism, conspiracy to import hundreds of tons of cocaine into the United States, and related weapons offenses. These charges carry with them a mandatory minimum sentence of 50 years imprisonment and a maximum sentence of life. Maduro is currently in Venezuela, but he may travel outside of Venezuela. And if anyone is aware of such travel, we also want them to be aware that the State Department has offered a reward of $15 million for the capture, for the conviction of Maduro. Maduro's 3 cartel co-conspirators, Cleaver Alcalá, Diosdado Cabello, and Hugo Carvajal, are at large, and the State Department has offered a $10 million reward for their arrest and or conviction. Cabello is the president of Venezuela's Constituent Assembly, as well as a current military officer and one of Maduro's top lieutenants in the cartel. Cabello has personally coordinated large cocaine shipments for the cartel and helped deliver rocket launchers to the FARC. Carvajal used to be the head of Venezuelan military intelligence. He is a key cartel operative who worked with Maduro and Cabello to facilitate cocaine shipments. Alcalá is a former Venezuelan general who operated near the Colombian border as an intermediary between the FARC and the cartel. These members of the cartel, led by Nicolas Maduro, now stand indicted for using their political and military power to promote narco-terrorism for their personal gain and to the great detriment of the Venezuelan people. This case took many years to build, and I want to thank the DEA's Special Operations Division. I also want to thank the DEA's Miami Field Division and Office, Homeland Security Investigations, and the State Department for its efforts in connection with the Narcotics Rewards Program incentives announced today. I also want to commend the prosecutors handling the case from my office, Amanda Houle, Matt LaRoche, Jason Richmond, and Kyle Wershba, and their supervisors, Emil Bovee and Sean Crowley, the chiefs of the office's Terrorism and International Narcotics Unit. And now, back to Main Justice.
Thank you, Jeff. And now I'd like to ask the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Ariana Fajardo, to make comments.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. As the home to the largest population of Venezuelan nationals in the United States, the Southern District of Florida, my home, has a special connection to this historic announcement by Attorney General William Barr. As I drive from my home every day to my downtown office, I see literally the fraud and corruption of Maduro's regime. Whether it is million-dollar condos or yachts, very fancy yachts, and or jets that fly through the air, private jets, all of these belonging to whether it's Venezuelan generals or Venezuelan officials, all of this has become a part of our society in Southern Florida. Well, I have a message to all of these Venezuelan officials. This party is coming to an end. In 2018, my office created a specialized unit, and that unit was created specifically to target corrupt foreign officials who use the banking system in the United States to clean their dirty money. They bring that money from South America to the United States to further their corrupt schemes. Since the inception of this specialized unit in our office, we have charged more than a dozen current and former Venezuelan nationals, both government officials as well as civilians, who have helped Maduro and his regime steal money from the people of Venezuela. We have seized over $450 million from defendants in connections to these cases. And we are just getting started. Today, I am pleased to announce that the Southern District of Florida has charged the current Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Venezuela, Miguel Moreno, with international money laundering and conspiracy to commit money laundering. As alleged in the criminal complaint against him, an extensive investigation by the Department of Homeland Security investigation revealed corruption and infection of the justice system in Venezuela at the highest level. In Venezuela, civil cases and criminal cases are not decided in a principled way. They're not decided based on evidence or what is right or what is wrong. Instead, decisions are based on whether or not you bribed the right person. An independent judiciary is supposed to be the last line of defense against the powerful and corrupt. The charges against Chief Justice Moreno demonstrate that the last line of defense in Venezuela has crumbled, creating a system without rule of law and without justice. In short, Venezuela has descended into a state of corruption, resulting in a massive treasure grab for the rich and powerful. As alleged in the complaint, the Chief Justice demanded bribes on dozens and dozens of substantial matters before his court. For example, the Chief Justice allowed the seizure of General Motors, a company worth $100 million in Venezuela, all in exchange for a percentage of those proceeds. And this left thousands of Venezuelans without jobs. Similarly, in criminal cases, the Chief Justice has allowed cases to be dismissed in exchange for bribes, or he has released individuals from custody based on bribes. He has allowed people to steal millions of dollars from Venezuela's state-owned oil proceeds company, PDVSA. So why does he do this? Why is he allowing all of this to go on? Why is he taking these bribes? He needs to support his lifestyle in the United States, in the Southern District of Florida. He travels here in private jets. He has his luxury residence here. He spends luxury money here. He has luxury cars. He likes to shop. He owns expensive watches. He shops in our luxury shops here at the Bal Harbor. And he always has high-end watches on, his high-end clothing. And this is how he supports his lifestyle. He is flooding our economy with this money, and this has to stop. This is just one of the many cases we have charged over the last 18 months. We are focused on rooting out this extensive corruption within our county here and within the Venezuelan government. We must do more to affect the highest levels of government in Venezuela. It is a regime that has caused millions of Venezuelans to flee their own country. I want to thank the prosecutors in my office that have made these cases possible. Michael Berger and Michael Nadler, who are here and participating here within social distancing. I also want to thank their supervisor who's here, Peter Ferrand, who's also participating in social distancing. I want to thank our many agencies, HSI, DEA, and IRS, who have participated in the investigation of these many cases. Rest assured, this is only the beginning of our efforts against the Venezuelan corruption, efforts that mark the beginning of what we are doing and the end of this criminal conduct. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General, for allowing us to participate today, and I turn it back over.
Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to the head of our criminal division, Assistant Attorney General Brian Schakowsky.
Thank you, Attorney General Barr. Today we also are announcing charges against General Vladimir Pedrino Lopez, the Venezuelan Minister of Defense for the Maduro regime. Pedrino Lopez, who has been indicted here in the District of Columbia, is accused of conspiring to traffic large amounts of cocaine on board aircraft registered in and destined for the United States. As the Attorney General and my colleagues from the Southern District of New York and the Southern District of Florida have explained, the Maduro regime is propped up by a sham judiciary and a corrupt military. That military, led by Pedrino Lopez, was responsible for interdicting suspected drug traffickers flying through Venezuelan airspace. But as Minister of Defense, Pedrino Lopez instead wielded his power to allow drug traffickers to use Venezuela as a transshipment route for narcotics destined for the United States. Pedrino Lopez allegedly accepted bribes from drug trafficking organizations to allow them free passage to fly through Venezuelan airspace. So long as he was paid off, cocaine-filled aircraft could get by and avoid interdiction. Far from stopping drug traffickers, the military, for the right price, gave safe passage to drug traffickers, terrorists, and other criminals. This was a brazen pay-to-play scheme and a corrupt abuse of power. and it facilitated the rampant drug trafficking of narcotics through Venezuela to Central America and eventually to the United States. On other occasions, when drug traffickers failed to pay his requisite bribes, Pedrino Lopez allegedly ordered or authorized interdiction, either forcing the pilots to land or shooting the planes down. Today's announcement should make it clear that the Department of Justice is firmly committed to holding current and former officials of the Maduro regime to account. Those like Pedrino Lopez, who use their positions of power to promulgate state-sponsored drug trafficking and narco-terrorism, will be prosecuted for their crimes. I, too, want to thank the prosecutors in the Criminal Division, from the Criminal Division's Narcotic and Dangerous Drugs Section, as well as the dedicated agents from the DEA who investigated and will continue to investigate this important case. Thank you.
Thank you. And I, too, want to thank all the agents and all the prosecutors who have worked on these cases over the years. As U.S. Attorney Berman mentioned, this work goes back in the Southern District of New York for over a decade. So it's greatly appreciated, and all the work done by the DEA and our HSI at our sister agency, the Department of Homeland Security. As alleged, the Maduro regime is awash in corruption and criminality. Maduro and his other defendants have betrayed the Venezuelan people and corrupted Venezuela's institutions. While the Venezuelan people suffer, this cabal lines their pockets with drug money and the proceeds of their corruption. And this has to come to an end.